Good evening, everybody. It may seem a little bit odd to start a faculty recital at Anderson University with a pop song, but the theme of tonight's program is, as you see, beauty from ashes. Out of great difficulty can come great beauty. And many people may be aware that a singer-songwriter named Johnny Nash wrote that song, but you may not be equally as aware that one of the people that made it famous was Ray Charles, who was blind by the time he was 7. And yet, in his life, he did really beautiful things and moved a nation with his music. So that is that's our subject for tonight. And today is an interesting day for me because it follows yesterday, which is a day unlike many, many others that I've had. This program is, first, I'm Amy Kniffen. I'm the viola faculty here. I'm joined by Rebecca Eady, who I'm sure everybody will recognize. I play in the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra in downtown Indianapolis, and I create programs for the education community. And I have a little business. It's called the Sassy Violas. That's my little logo up there. You can see, reflects my viola. And this is us on stage. I have these pictures for the students when I take these programs into school. And I tell the kids, there's a phrase that may seem a little bit glib: when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And sometimes that works, and sometimes you need professional help, and sometimes you need a hug, and sometimes you need some chocolate. But what I want to talk about is 4 composer-performers who, out of their life's challenges, created something really beautiful. And this program I've taken to a summer program of inner city kids, 3rd through 5th grade. So I played it for as young as 3rd graders. And this past summer, I played it for a retirement center of fairly wealthy people who had been bankers and lawyers and university professors and all sorts of walks of life. And the content landed well with them. It landed well with the 3rd through 5th graders. And yesterday I played this program for perhaps the toughest group of kids I have been around ever, I think. And it wasn't clear that they were going to sit down and listen at the beginning of the class period. And it wasn't clear that they were going to agree to be quiet. So I just started talking, and I had to use my mom voice once or twice. But as I started talking about the kind of difficulties that these composers and performers had faced, I could see on the faces of the kids in the room recognition of similar life circumstances. And it feels very much to me like it was very important that I told them that out of life's challenges, you can create beautiful things for your own joy and for the benefit of people around you. So I'd like to start with Rebecca Clark, who was a British-American composer. And she was one who, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a definite glass ceiling for women as composers. And she had the great difficulty, she and her 4 brothers and sisters, of being raised by an abusive father. And that had a lasting impact on her throughout her life. And at age 19, she wound up being thrown out of the house by him because she dared to criticize his extramarital affairs, which he didn't appreciate. So at 19, she found herself alone and having to take care of herself. And she had already gained admittance into the Royal Academy, which for a woman was unheard of by that point. And with her viola, she also won an audition and joined an orchestra in London. And she was the first woman. That had never happened before. And so little by little, she began making her own way. And she wound up coming to America, and frequently when her music was placed on a program, she used a male pseudonym until she got to this particular competition, which in the early 1900s, the competition prize money was $1,000, which was a lot. I mean, today, if somebody were to give me $1,000, I'd be pretty happy about it. More than 100 years ago, that might have been enough for her to support herself for the year. And the piece of music that tied for first is the piece of music that we would like to present for you. And it would have won, according to the judges, if they could have believed that a woman had written a piece this good. The next person that I would like to talk about is Florence Price, who was an American composer, probably a very familiar name now that her music has been largely rediscovered. She and Rebecca Clark were born only 1 year different from each other, so they encountered the same glass ceiling, except Florence Price had the added challenge of being a woman of color at a time when that was a great difficulty. However, her childhood in Little Rock, Arkansas was extremely happy. Her father was a dentist, the only black dentist in town, but apparently very good because he had an affluent business. Her mother owned a restaurant and several businesses, taught her piano. She had a lovely home and everything that she could want, piano lessons, private library. She attended New England Conservatory and upon graduation got a job at Clark University in Atlanta, a historically black college, married a lawyer, and they had 2 little girls. And it sounds like her life was fabulous, right? What great difficulty is there? Well, they moved back to Little Rock, and Little Rock had changed since she had grown up there, and the segregation made it so that neither one of them could find work, so they moved to Chicago. But by this point, it was apparent that her husband was abusive, and in the 1930s, she divorced him. And divorce in the 1930s is different than it is now. And she bore the stigma of the divorce, which is entirely unfortunate. But additionally, without a father or a husband to do business for her, she was at a distinct disadvantage. Because remember, it was only in 1974, which the kids that I was talking to yesterday, 6th through 8th graders, thought 1974 sounded like ancient history, but I was 5, so it doesn't feel like that long ago to me. But 1974 is, of course, many of you will remember, the first year that women could get a credit card in their own name. So 40 or more years before that, she was at a serious disadvantage to support herself and her 2 children. So she played organ for movies. Remember that movies were silent before they had sound, and so she was a movie organist, and she wrote jingles for commercials back in the day when commercials were only heard on the radio. But little by little, as she found her footing in Chicago, she became part of a movement called the Chicago Black Renaissance, which was a movement of artists of color infusing their discipline, which had traditionally been considered European, with their own culture and creating something new and important. And on the screen, you'll see poet Langston Hughes and pianist Margaret Bonds, and you might recognize this picture of Marian Anderson with Abraham Lincoln in the back. If you're familiar with the story of that picture, it's a powerful image all by itself. So what I would like to play for you, there is a piece for viola and piano that Florence Price wrote. It's called Adoration, and it's lovely, but that's not the one I'm playing. I'm playing one called My Dream, and the lyrics are a poem by Langston Hughes, and I'm trying my hand at Canva these days, and this is my attempt at being artistic with the text of this poem, so you'll let me know how effective that is later, maybe. Somebody suggested that I do the curved line because of the text of the poem. It's about being free to be who you really are. And this is My Dream by Langston Hughes, set to music by Florence Price. The next composer that I'd like to take a look at was actually one of my teachers in college. This is Emmanuel Vardy, who was born in Jerusalem in 1915. But Jerusalem wasn't a safe place for him and his Jewish parents. And in 1920, they had to flee the city. His parents had been university professors, and they traveled across Europe, stepping in one place after another, and then eventually they wound up in New York. And Manny had started playing violin when he was 3, and he was accepted into Juilliard at the ripe old age of 12. Juilliard wasn't accepting 12-year-olds at that time, so he attended a preparatory school while taking lessons. And while I was studying with him once, he was confused as to why I wanted to do my recital in February instead of April or May, so that I would have more time to work on the repertoire. And I said, well, I'd like to take some orchestral auditions. And he said, well, why don't you just play some of your recital rep for that? And so I had to explain that 50 or 60 years later, that's not how you get an orchestra job these days. He didn't understand the idea of orchestral excerpts because William Primrose had taken him to Toscanini's house, and he played Chansons Poème and some of his recital repertoire, and that's how he got his first major gig in the NBC Orchestra. And I explained that that's not how we do it anymore. And I said, that worked for you because you were a prodigy, and I'm not. And he goes, well, yeah. Thanks. But anyway, he was also a professional level painter. He went to Italy on a Fulbright for painting. And you'll see one of his paintings there. This was his signature style. And behind his name is a line drawing of his. And he was also a photographer and a conductor, and once he had recorded all of existing viola repertoire, he wanted more, and so he commissioned pieces to be written, and he combed through archives and found many pieces that had not been published, and he wrote music of his own. And the piece that I would like to play for you is the slow movement of a suite of American folk songs that he arranged, took the American folk songs and gave them his treatment. And I think it's interesting that one of the songs that he chose to treat was Wayfaring Stranger, considering the history of his family. having traveled for as long as they did before they were able to find a home. This is, he calls it ad lib and slow walk, but actually it's his setting of Wayfaring Stranger. The final composer that we'd like to take a look at is a young Hawaiian composer, and you'll notice that she's still alive. I think we have some living composers in the room, so they do exist. Her name is Anne Lelehua Lancelati. Her father is Italian and her mother is Hawaiian, and she is a Kanaka Maoli, or Native Hawaiian composer. Kanaka Maoli is what Hawaiians prefer to call themselves, at least according to her. And when you say Hawaii, how many people here have been to Hawaii? Anybody? It's a beautiful place, right? Millions of tourists want to go there every year because of the lush foliage and the beaches and the climate, and it's just beautiful in every way. There was a Hawaiian monarchy, and this is the last Hawaiian queen. And when I do this in schools, I give the kids a chance to try to pronounce the queen's name. It's Liliuokalani, and here you see the palace of the Hawaiian monarchy where she was imprisoned before she was relieved of her position. And this is the Hawaiian, the royal crest of Hawaii. And I used to know, I used to know the Hawaiian phrase that is at the bottom. The English translation is, "The land shall be preserved in righteousness." But Hawaii, of course, is a beautiful place, and when the Europeans came in the 1780s, the diseases that they brought with them decimated about 90% over the next 20, 30 years, 90% of the Hawaiian people. And the history of the 1800s is a history of attempted cultural erasure. As they were little by little removed from their lands, they wound up working the plantations almost as slaves, and their cultural customs were outlawed one by one. However, out of that history has emerged several generations of Hawaiians who have worked to establish Hawaiian immersion language schools, and they have revived their own language, their own culture, their own artistic disciplines. And out of that history is a new generation of Hawaiian composers and artists of various disciplines who are claiming the dignity of their heritage and forging something new and beautiful. One of these is, of course, Anne, and I think she goes by Lelehua, and this is what she says about herself: "I am a contemporary indigenous person, and I exist in all the complexities of what it means to be a hapa, or half, and what it means to be grappling with the historical trauma as well as joy filtered through time." So she's acknowledging the difficulty that her people have experienced over the last several hundred years, and incorporating that into what she offers. The piece that I would like to play of hers is called Ko'u Inoa, which means "my name is." And incorporated into this piece are pitches from a hymn called Hawaii Aloha, which is a song that's sung in community events. It's sung at the end of the Ironman every year, and it's sung at the beginning and end of many concerts. And Hawaiians will sing this song wherever they are in the world if they are missing home, which is the circumstance that Lelehua found herself in when she was in Germany. She was missing her home. And so she wrote this piece, Ko'u Inoa. And as I said, it takes select pitches, so you won't hear a whole melody. But she was missing, in landlocked Germany, she was missing the sound of the ocean. And so she used a Baroque string technique called bariolage to try to imitate the sound of the motion. So this is Ko'u Inoa. Thank you. So as I stood in the classroom yesterday looking at a group of about 20 kids who were really, really tough-looking characters, I said, the people I've talked about today faced real-life challenges, serious challenges, challenges that could have taken them under. And yet they faced those challenges and they took a look at what their abilities and their gifts were. And they decided to not be defeated by those challenges. They created beauty for their own joy and for the benefit of the people around them. And that's the message that I want to leave you with this evening. We all have challenges. We all have gifts. And challenges don't have to be bad. Challenges can just be challenges. And we can take them. We don't have to deny that we have challenges. There are difficulties and they're really hard. But we can take those and incorporate them into what we know and who we are and what we have to offer. And we can create something beautiful for our own joy and for the benefit of those around us. Thank you so much for coming tonight.